The ANC announcing after a special NEC meeting held over Sunday and Monday, saying confusion and serious reputational damage had arisen from some members who'd stepped aside due to criminal charges, accepting nominations for executive structures in the organisation. Now the party has spelled it out that you cannot accept a nomination or stand for a party position if you've stepped aside. ANC spokesperson Pule Mabe joins me to give clarity on this. Thank you very much for coming to studio, Pule. Was this necessary because of Zandile Gumede and Mandla Msibi, who both had stepped aside, were then nominated by structures, got the positions, and then had to say, well, thanks, but no thanks, essentially?
Evening and evening to your viewers. I must clarify this important point, that resolutions of the ANC taken at conferences implemented by those that come into the leadership structure do not have names of individual comrades attached to them. Mm-hmm. The 54th National Conference of the ANC held in Nasrec almost 5 years ago gave this National Executive Committee a mandate, and part of the mandate that it said we must do is that we must work to restore the integrity and credibility of the African National Congress. It then said, as part of doing that work, you must implement various resolutions to renew the organization and present it again as one that could be trusted by the masses out there. And part of that was to consider step aside on those of our cadres that are criminally charged or indicted to appear in a court of law.
I'm getting a sense that that perhaps the party didn't even envisage that this sort of scenario would occur, because if you look at the spirit of what the step aside rule is saying, essentially if you stepped aside, one would imagine, I mean I would, that it's fairly obvious you shouldn't be accepting positions within the party. Are you having to sort of, you know, as you see these ramifications coming through, going, okay, now we have to be even clearer about exactly what we mean?
Yes, correct. I was making that point, actually, that having agreed on that, when we came in as the leadership, we began work that was led by our Treasurer General, Comrade Pule Mabe, to then develop guidelines around this step-aside resolution. The document presented to the NEC and adopted in that way, we then agreed that it will be a living document, meaning it's one that we could be able to strengthen from time to time. Now, as they say, experience is the best teacher. Out of experiences, we realized that there could be gray areas, as you are rightfully saying, which require us to provide the necessary clarity. There was ambiguity even amongst ourselves in the media, some in our own organization and all of that. Now, we came out of the special NEC, which ended almost at midnight last night, having said that if you had stepped aside, you should not accept any nomination into a position of responsibility at the branch level, regional level, provincial level, and even at the national level. And we went further to say that where you have been temporarily suspended in accordance with 25.70 of the ANC Constitution, the same principle must apply.
So what does this mean for Zandile Gumede? Because now, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that she had stepped aside. She's facing those solid waste tender corruption charges which are coming to court next month. She'd anyway stepped aside, but in absentia, because she didn't attend the meeting, she was nominated and she won the position in eThekwini. She then stepped aside from that and said, look, I won't be taking that up because I can't. What happens now with that position? Does this mean that eThekwini branch now has to nominate someone else?
Well, of course, I mean, we have empowered our national officials to be able to deal with that, to make sure that we do not have any anomalies. Take it this way. If you go to a conference of the ANC and and not that they are guilty, 5 of the comrades are criminally charged and are indicted to appear in a court and step aside, and all of them are officials. What does it mean? It means that you are going to leave that conference without officials present with you in the meeting. So the practicality of it is such that it places a strain on organization. Now, to deal with the ambiguities and to make sure that in really protecting the reputation of the African National Congress, we do exactly what is required of us through the eye of the needle. The eye of the needle talks about leaders of the ANC being exemplary, being trusted by people out there. So when the ANC makes its resolutions, in the application and implementation of those, it has got to make sure that not only are they believable, but also they are understood by everyone in the organization. Our members of the ANC, who are loyal and disciplined members of the African National Congress, should understand that subjecting themselves to the discipline of the organization also require that they also accept undertakings made by them at conferences on how resolutions have got to be rolled out. Because it is not this NEC that came with these resolutions. It is members themselves.
Yeah.
But the constitution of the ANC empowers us to then develop guidelines on how we go about implementing resolutions.
I hear you, and you're making it absolutely clear that this is the way it goes. You've had to make it clear, because the unfortunate truth, and perhaps the broader question, is why are ANC party members even considering nominating someone who stepped aside? I mean, surely anyone would go, that wouldn't be in the spirit of this to nominate this person. I mean, is it distressing for ANC leadership to see that party members still want to nominate people who are on very serious charges?
Remember that the constitution of the Africa, that's why we needed to clarify this, because the constitution of the ANC does empower certain rights on members to nominate and be nominated. But then now it goes further, because there is a framework through which the constitution of the ANC, which is the supreme law of the African National Congress, is drawn. Yeah. And in that framework, just as you get into Rule 25, just that whole section deals with the discipline of members. So while you have got the right, while as a member you have got the right to nominate and be nominated, these are conditionalities under which you may not be able to stand for positions. And part of that rule is Rule 25.70, which spells out that when you are temporarily suspended owing to you being criminally charged or indicted to appear in a court of law, you will not be able to stand for any position. Yeah. But we've done this, we have now developed guidelines on the notion of stepping aside. You now have got, if you read the statement of the ANC NEC, it actually clubs the two together.
Yeah, it makes it very clear.
That there is no confusion.
Yeah, I want to ask you about the phrase, you spoke about the confusion, but you've also spoken about the reputational damage. So you've acknowledged that this is not a good look for a party that's trying to clean up its act.
Yes.
And I have to ask you about the fact that when the president was visiting flood-ravaged KwaZulu-Natal, at his side on many occasions was Zandile Gumede. Now, we spoke to her and she said, yes, well, I've stepped aside, but she was still speaking as a party member. She was granting interviews. Now, as someone who stepped aside, surely she should not even have been in that literal frame with the president. Someone who's going to trial next month on corruption charges, standing right next to the president of the country who says he's cleaning up the party and he's going to take a hard line on graft. I mean, that must have been hugely embarrassing to the party.
Not necessarily. I think on this one notion, really, I would stand to disagree, because these are humanitarian issues. So are you saying that when there's an issue that requires us to stand together on humanitarian grounds, be in solidarity with each other, if the only... No, let me make my point. So if the comrades who are staying on this street that has been ravaged by floods, these are cadres of the ANC who had stepped aside and they are the only ones remaining in the village.
Even a mayor, no, I have to interject, even a mayor who is standing trial for corruption charges for stealing money from the city, and then she can still go around that same city saying, oh, this is very sad. Do you really think that's okay?
Well, I mean, I would find it a little bit misplaced to want to link humanitarian efforts, solidarity shown by members of society. Remember, when you are charged to appear in a court of law, it doesn't mean that you are guilty of those charges. No, let me come in.
But if you've been charged, there's a serious case to answer.
No, but when the ANC makes a statement calling on everyone in society to stand on the side of those flood victims, the ANC doesn't say in this statement, if you know that you are charged, please don't, because no, but let me finish. Don't display this humanitarian action, because humanitarian action displayed by someone who can't be trusted.
But in terms of the step-aside rules, should she even be speaking publicly?
Well, I mean, speaking publicly in eThekwini as a member of that community who is concerned, who also...
You think that's okay?
Well, she's a member of the ANC. She's a member of the ANC. This point must be amplified. When you are a member of the African National Congress and you care for the people, you can't say, because I've stepped aside and these houses have burned, no, I can't go there because... No, we must understand a humanitarian act, an act of solidarity with those that want us to extend their hand to them, cannot be confused with cadres who are having challenges and having to appear in court. Because if we confuse
so what I'm hearing, Pule Mabe,
yes.
and we do have to close, but that you're saying in that particular context, it's okay that she was side by side with the president. Thank you very much for coming in. I think we have to close the show. That was Pule Mabe, who speaks for the ANC.